welcome to this episode of the Small Bike Stuff podcast. I'm going to have to put my menthol inhaler down, Dana. We've just been having a menthol inhaler riff off behind the scenes.
This is my tiger bump. I can go one in each. I got the double.
If you're asking why, that's a great segue in today's topic. Today's topic is why. The question of why when it comes to small bikes. Small bikes exist all around the world, and on this podcast so far, we have talked about one kind of specific historical part of small bikes, which was the story of the trail bike. We've talked about one of your trips that you've done on small bikes, so where you left Bangkok and you disappeared and went off to the Cambodian border. And saw some interesting things along the way. And I guess now, if you have listened to those two episodes, you're kind of wondering why these two guys care about small bikes so much. So I'm Callum. I'm here in New Zealand. Dana, he's in Bangkok. So let's kick into it, man, and discuss why.
Let's definitely. Well, let's start by defining what a small bike is. And I think maybe we differ on this a bit.
Yeah, 100%. So I think this depends on where you've been raised and what you've been exposed to growing up, and then what you've been exposed to in your adult life. In New Zealand, small was a two. So when I grew up, the licensing categories in New Zealand, if you had a learner motorbike license, because we've got 3 license stages: learner, restricted, and full for every category, for cars, for bikes, for whatever. And the learner and the restricted category in New Zealand traditionally was 250cc. In about the mid-2000s, they changed that to a power-to-weight ratio called the LAMS rating. And so these days, if you have a learner motorbike license, you can go out and buy a Yamaha MT-07, which is twin-cylinder, parallel twin, 700cc. It can rip wheelies. It's just kind of got like a throttle stop, so you can't turn the throttle all the way. And so small bikes for me growing up were these 4-cylinder inline-4 250cc Japanese bikes that would do 18,000 RPM. They were like the pinnacle. There was still a few 2-strokes around, like TZR 150s and stuff like that. Okay. And then there's a big scooter scene, 50cc and below, because in New Zealand, you don't need a ride. You don't need a motorbike license to ride a vehicle that's 50cc or below. So it's super common to get your learner car license because you can't drive alone on your learner car license. Yeah. Then get a moped or a scooter and jump on that and disappear. And then as I got older, man, I lived in Thailand, and all of that got absolutely flipped upside down on its head. So where did you start? What was it like growing up for you with small bikes? What were they?
So I think I sent you a meme not that long ago of the difference between like licenses in I think it was the UK and America. You know, in the UK they have classes. You can start out at like 150 or 250. Then you can go to like 300. And like in America, like you pass a very basic test and you can go out and buy a Hayabusa, like and drive it legally, no problems. And like that's just like the way it is. And you know, in America, like a lot of people would call like a CB300 or even a 500 a small bike. Like that would be like sort of like the umbrella term of small bikes would cover something like a 500cc. And the entire time I lived in the US, and you know, up until like 10 years ago, there really wasn't much of a scooter scene, like a small bike scene, in the sense of like I don't think the Grom was out when I left the States.
2013,
2012.
12, yeah, 12. I think it came out.
So maybe it just like hit the scene, but I mean, to me in America, like, and I think we'll probably talk about this at length in another episode, but the Grom really like sparked that whole resurgence in the small bikes, at least in the U.S., maybe in some parts of Europe. But you know, there's like a 50cc scene, things like the Honda Ruckus, you know, like again, like because you don't need a license for those like 49, 50cc bikes. But a lot of people would consider something like a 300 a small bike. And obviously you move to Thailand, and the depth of which you can delve into the world of small bikes is quite amazing.
It really is. There's quite truly no limit to the world of small bikes in Thailand. And I think in New Zealand, we've also kind of mimicked that American opinion and attitude towards Honda's 125cc range, which did only start with the Grom. But if you lived in Thailand, that was just a the engine from the Honda Wave.
Yeah.
And so that's what that became. It became the Grom, and in New Zealand the Grom came out. A few people bought them, and then the Monkey and the Super Cub coming out that really advanced things, especially with the Monkey. The Monkey became super popular, and now we've got the CT125 that has also become very popular. And I was saying in one of my earlier videos when I first returned home from New Zealand to New Zealand after we met last year in 2022. I arrived and went to a small bike meet lineup, and 85% of the bikes were 125cc Hondas. They were Monkeys, or they were Groms, or they were CT125s.
They're great bikes. They last forever.
Yeah, and because of our population issue in New Zealand, and people will be like, issue? There's no issue. We just don't have many people. So therefore, markets are very small and not developed. And
you're an island or two islands, and it's expensive to get stuff to you.
It is. So a Honda CT125 or a Honda Grom or any of those bikes that are maybe between 70 to 100,000 baht, which is say 2,900, 3,000 New Zealand dollars to 4,000 New Zealand dollars, they all end up being double that when you get them in New Zealand. So you're paying quite a bit more. And I get why, because different countries have different regulations, and I think this will kind of come into our conversations coming up about why. But in New Zealand, we have different regulations about bikes. We recently had an ABS law come in.
Oh, dual channel, right?
No, Australia's dual channel. We don't mind single channel.
Okay.
Yeah. So here we're lucky enough that if it has ABS on the front wheel, we're fine.
Okay.
But if it doesn't, we can't get it. So if Honda Wave can't buy it in New Zealand, it's not able to be sold. And that's just kind of shaped the way the small bike scene has worked. So you went to Thailand similar time as me.
Mm-hmm.
I went to Thailand and I had only ever ridden a 50cc scooter before in New Zealand. I had one for about 7 months until I could drive a car legally. And once I was able to drive that car, I ditched 2 wheels and didn't touch it. Arrive in Thailand, boom, I'm riding 3 up within like 3 days.
Yeah.
On a Honda Dream. What was your experience?
So I had ridden a little bit prior to coming to Thailand, but not like I didn't own a bike on my own. Like I would ride friends, or I'd go somewhere and I'd rent like a scooter, like a twist and go, like a Ruckus or something like that.
Where would you do that?
Like
what was holidays? Where did you go? Like compared to where you
it's
live?
usually like beach places. Like you go on
Okay.
like if you go like around a beach somewhere in the States, like there's an island in Rhode Island. Rhode Island's not an island.
I didn't know that. I have no clue. I'm so ignorant. Sorry.
And but there's a little island off the coast that you can go visit called Block Island.
Okay.
And Block Island is like one road that goes around the island, right? It's kind of like like Sumet or Koh Sumet or something. And so you go out there and you can rent a scooter for the day, and you're just zipping around. And yeah, it's fun, and like places like that, like you'd be somewhere with like beaches or somewhere, and you could rent a scooter. I'd be like at a friend's place, and they've got dirt bikes. I'd ride those. But yeah, I never really like rode. Like I rode on a few big bikes, like trying them out in the States, but nothing crazy. Okay. But I was very unhappy driving as a car driver. I didn't really like sitting in a car, commuting for so long every day. I thought that was a horrible part of life in America. And when I got here, I mean, I think I told you my first bike was a Raider, Suzuki Raider here. And
you went straight into the deep end, man.
Yeah.
Like you didn't do what most people do, which is go like rent the bottom of the line 110cc twist and go Honda with drum brakes front and rear. Yeah. He just went straight into the race bike.
Yeah. I was like, okay, this bike look. I looked up, like I'm like, oh, Underbone seemed like a cool, and to this day, like I still love that style, the Underbone style. Yeah. And I was just looking at like, oh, what's going to be a good bike, and I wanted to get a manual. I wanted to like really improve those skills. So it's kind of why I didn't go with a Wave. Right. And which would have probably been the smarter choice, much more.
I forgive you. Yeah. It's okay.
I love the Wave. I like the, for as much as I like that bike, like I still didn't get one when I bought my new bike.
Yeah. I know. That's all right. I do forgive you.
I mean, I think I made the right choice, but the Wave's also 25,000 baht less.
Yeah, you've gone from a Raider 150. You rode a Grom, which we've talked about in a couple of episodes
Yep.
before. Done a couple of changes. It was the 4-speed Grom, not the 5-speed Grom that's
Yep.
out now. So it's the earlier model. It's got
It's a
14-inch wheels
2015.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2015. And you've had that since new. You bought that new.
Yep.
And now you've, after much deliberation, and I'm talking days and days and days of us messaging about every single possibility. Can I get a wave and then add a manual? And then I could put the 5-speed gearbox in it that you can get from like Yamanashi, and then I could do this and I could do that, and then it would be perfect. And then I sent you a link recently of this Thai dude, Backpacker Ball or something, that he rides a Honda Wave with crash bars on the front.
Yeah, the orange and white.
Yeah. So I mean, it's like I always think it's a super attractive prospect, but I think you made the right choice. You've bought a Yamaha Exciter.
Exciter 155.
Yeah. So it's the 155. It's a 6-speed manual. It's got a vertical engine, and basically you've gone to the most modern, capable, technical bike if you want a little bit of pep, a little bit of excitement, and I guess if you don't want 4 gears.
Yeah, I mean. Well, the 4-speed it poses challenges, but that's part of the fun of it. And that sort of like horizontally mounted air cooled 125cc is unbeatable. Like you just can't break it. And it just runs. It runs.
And if it does break, then you just fix it from any uncle on the side of the road.
Any uncle, you find a guy named Samchai and he owns a wrench, he'll fix your bike. For sure.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so really it came back. We talked about this. I love the Dax. I really do. That is the least practical bike for me to get though. As much as I love it, it's like everything that was wrong with the MSX is like twice as wrong with the Dax.
It really is. Did you see that Dax recently that I posted with the Pikachu looking Bosozoku exhaust? That CB Media was down at that event, and and that video, the bike was in the background for about a couple of minutes.
Nice.
And he's like, I think that's the Japanese style with the cars, the Bozokus or something. Anyway. As usual, he did a great showcase with not a lot of intricate detail, but he did showcase the event really, really well. So
in his style. I'm sure there were very many attractive women in the video and thumbnail.
Yeah, in the first few seconds.
Yeah,
absolutely, and it continued. But it's super interesting that you bought that bike because small bikes have a long and varied history, and I think Southeast Asia is probably like one of the biggest proponents of propelling the small bike world.
Well, I think we still haven't answered like what do I think and what do you think is a small bike?
Okay. Well, for me, I think it's a Honda Wave. That's if you want to really get into it. Like for me, a Honda Wave or anything within a similar size is a small bike. I will still call like a 150cc bike that has a tank on top and it's like a Honda CBR 150. You can call that a small bike, and I'll agree with you. If I have to cut it off at engine size, we're about 250, 300cc is where I call it the limit. But then there's the Forza, which used to be 300, the Honda Forza Twist and Go, which is a bigger PCX, and that's now a 350, and I still consider that to be a small bike. But that's getting up to nearly 500cc's of power now. So
I call those the Pattaya Cruiser. The Forza, because you go to, there's a little town in Thailand, you can Google it, called Pattaya, and a lot of old white gentlemen retire there, and you'll see them cruising around Beach Road on their Forza with their tank top and their flip flops.
Exactly.
And it's a thing, but like engine size. So here's the thing: I wouldn't consider any of the CB 300 range to be a small bike.
That's getting into the medium range.
Yeah, like the CBR, the CBF, the CL, the CRF. Like none of those in 300 are a small bike to me, and they're all great bikes. And like I owned the CRF 250 for a while, great dirt bike. And I bought big bikes, I dabbled, and I'm always like, it's not for me. I want to go back to a small bike, and I'll sell the bike. But I think it's a mix of both like style and engine size. So like I'm an Underbone fan like you, right? So like a Wave, the Exciter, the Suzuki, which I would stay away from the Raider. It's a bit mad. So like the Underbone style, the Grom clearly I think is a small bike. It has the same engine as the Wave, different transmission. And then there's like I know a guy who has a Lambretta that I think is like a 300cc, and a Lambretta is a step through Italian scooter, and that's got, I think it's like a 300. So it's like the size of my MSX. It's not a big bike. Like
it's equally orientation as much as engine size, and I think it's like a combo of those. Once you start getting up into bigger engine size, it's like, okay, what does it look like? If it looks like a motorcycle, it's just trying to be a mini superbike, then no, it doesn't count. But if it's a sit-on-top scooter with 25, 30 liters of underseat storage and enough room for 3 or 4 people, then fine, I guess we'll accept you.
The Exciter has about 5cc of underseat storage. You might be able to fit your green book under there.
Yeah, if you're lucky. Yeah. If you're lucky.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say, like the underseat storage thing is interesting, and then like step through versus underbone versus like I don't even know what you call the MSX. It's more of a mini bike.
It's a mini bike. Yeah.
It's not an underbone. It's got a frame, right? Yeah. And it's not a step through, obviously. But yeah, I mean, there's different variants to it, and so what is it? Yeah, it's a mix of style and engine size. Like if the Exciter was a 250, I'd still consider it'd be a dope underbone at 250.
Yeah, it'd be freaking fast.
That 5 liter tank wouldn't last long.
5 miles. That's it. Range done.
Well, I was gonna say the funny thing about Yamaha, they make a bike with that engine. They make a few bikes with that engine, the same 155. That I think it's the XSR 155 is like a cafe racer looking bike. They make something called the M/15.
Yes.
And these all look like what you would consider a traditional motorcycle or a motorcycle in the modern era. Whereas, with like 40% less weight and a much different body style, they also make the Exciter 155 and then the Aerox, which obviously is not the same engine, but same displacement, and both underbones.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's equally, like I say, the I guess it comes down to personal opinion, and if we're just lucky that you and I kind of share the same opinion, because it makes it a real easy discussion.
Real easy.
If you, like I say, I was trying to segue before into the history of bikes in general, just to
until I stopped you.
Constantly, no, I'm glad you did, because I completely ignored. I think I was getting way too excited. To contextualize small bikes for you, like the first ever motorcycle that was gas powered that was produced was from 1885. It was made by Gottlieb Daimler and Wilhelm Maybach, and those are 2 last names that you may be familiar with. Because they went through into the actual automotive world, I guess you'd say. That was a 264cc air-cooled 4-stroke single-cylinder Harley Davidson, a brand everyone knows. In 1903, they made the Model 1, which was a model actually copied from a French manufacturer, and the French dude made it for like 160cc. And of course, America was like, that's not big enough.
Bigger is always better.
So they made it as physically big as they could with a single cylinder, which was 440cc 4-stroke. So it's a single cylinder, the first Harley that came out, but it's a big thumper of a thing. And then Honda, after World War II, Soichiro Honda basically came across, it was like 50 or 200, it wasn't many, of these Tohatsu radios that were powered by a petrol generator engine. And he just took those and repurposed them into bicycle frames. And if you go into any of the club houses in Thailand, they've got the Bada copies with a modern Honda, like weed eater, weed whacker motor. Sitting in the frame just to kind of like showcase it. So that's where I guess the start of motorcycles and then 2 hugely popular brands came in. What was your exposure to motorcycles in, like, as a kid? Like, if you think as a teenager, what was cool? Was it Harleys back then? Like in New Zealand, we just view America as this big Harley loving nation. So.
For the most part, I mean, like also keep in mind, like I grew up in a very blue collar city, and like in the Northeast, so a lot of Harley fans, and like that's the exposure to it, and like a lot of I feel like maybe it was like being a product like in the 90s. that a lot of people would sort of like put like a racist slant on things, and they would always refer to Japanese bikes as rice burners,
Yeah,
right?
it's wild, eh?
And like it feels just like weird to say, but like I would see like some sport bikes every now and then, but yeah, the majority of what you would see is like a Harley or guys riding Harleys, and that was just never. I always found Harleys unappealing.
Mm.
And I'm pretty sure like someone's gonna want to take my passport away for saying this, but
Yeah, that's fine.
yeah,
You take it.
they're great. Yeah, I'm trying to
Yes,
give it
yes.
back. So yeah,
Yeah.
there are they're cool bikes in a lot of ways. The aesthetic, the vibe, the culture around them can be very cool, but they are so big and like so unnecessary. Like
The funny thing about that bravado and that staunch loyalty to American brands is that that kind of came over into New Zealand. So New Zealand motorcycle gangs first existed after World War II, just like everywhere else. But they were more riding Triumphs and British bikes growing up, Norton Commando 650s and stuff like that. They put crazy big handlebars on them, and you just rode around in denim, and you were super greasy and disgusting. And that was just kind of a New Zealand motorcycle gang that transferred throughout the 70s and the 80s, and everyone started getting into the Harley scene. And I distinctly remember gang run motorcycle shows growing up in my city, and it would be like no jappers on the sign. So you couldn't have Japanese. That's what they call them. Jappers is what they call a Japanese bike, and you're like, okay, all right, well that's all good and well. But they would let British bikes in, so Triumph was cool. And that still flowed on to now in 2023, where if you're in a New Zealand motorcycle gang, and these are the ones that are generally considered like criminal entities and stuff like that, they basically still love V rods, which is like the one Harley Davidson model that didn't take off in the States. That was like Porsche developed and designed and liquid cooled, and actually had some kind of like smooth operation to it. And they still allow Triumph, but the thing is, most of the Triumphs all the guys ride are built in Thailand now. But the signs for their shows would still say no Japanese bikes. It's like, yeah, but these other bikes are built in Thailand. You guys need, like, they're just kind of ignoring it, and it's like old habits die hard, I guess. And even Harley Davidson outside of America now, most countries get their Harley Davidsons from Thailand, or like if you go into a Harley dealership here now, like the big 1340cc Road Kings, or I think they're bigger than that now. They're like 1.8 liter bikes, but they're all made in Thailand. But in America, it's made in America only.
Yeah, what's funny is Thailand as a country really does play a significant role in motorcycles, and small bikes in particular, but motorcycles in general. They've sort of carved a niche, for better or for worse, and like I believe all the CT 125s that aren't sold in Japan are made here.
Yes.
And
I thought the Japanese ones were still made in Thailand, personally.
Oh, maybe they are, but like I know every MSX is made here, every Grom.
Absolutely.
And actually, from what I've heard too, like Honda Thailand played a big role in the design development of the Grom.
Well, that's interesting, because Honda, as an entity in Thailand, started producing their own models outside of Honda Japan's kind of oversight in 1986. It was the Honda Dream 100cc. It's a 4-speed. It was a step up from the 90. They used to do a 90, and they did a 70 as well, the C70 and the C90. And then they brought out this kind of more plasticky, but still pressed steel frame 100cc 4-speed. And the reason that became so popular is because it was made in Thailand. The government kind of got behind it. And if I recall correctly, if you were a teacher or a government worker, you could get that bike for either a significant discount, or you could get like a really nice, really long finance program with like no interest. So they kind of handed the bikes out. And that was in 1986. But before that, Honda was still a massive part of Thailand. And now you say, yeah, they made all the monkeys and the CTs and the Groms. They do. And it's just interesting because it's smart. They had this one engine style with the Wave, and they're like, hey, let's just put that in as many bikes as possible, which is also what Triumph does with big bikes. They've got like 3 engine styles. That's it. They've got a 900, a 1200, and a 2.3 liter.
I think that's Royal Enfield as well. Like that's their style is they got like a couple engines and like, hey, how many bikes can we build on this platform? But I mean, if you look at Honda's lineup, right, they've got like every 300 is the same, every 500 is the same, every 650. Right. And like they just build these different models around that. So you see the Rebel 300, the new one is the CF, the Scrambler, or the CL 300, right? The CBR 300, CB 300F. They're all the same engine with different trim, right? And different gearing. And it works. And I think the same thing with a small bike. They have the 125. My 125 and my MSX is in like 10 bikes.
Yeah, it is easily, and you're right. It does work, and we see in the West all of these niche 1000 limited edition production runs of monkeys. Like they'll have an Astro Boy monkey, or they'll have a
Doraemon monkey.
Yeah, they will. They have all these different, and they'll sell 1,000 of them, and they sell within Thailand easily. Yeah. There's a sweet spot with the population and the disposable income with the population just generally seems to have, like middle class Thai people. Buying a bike because you think it looks cool isn't like a massive outlay,
especially when it's like 80,000 baht.
Yeah, it's not huge. It's nothing.
And they're made here. They don't have to ship anywhere. I mean, so I even like last night coming home on the road, I saw a guy with a One Piece monkey, right? Like a limited edition One Piece monkey, and I was like, oh, damn.
Right? Yeah, and I saw those in the shop recently. In my video that I tried to film at the Clubhouse shop before I saw you, I'm pointing it at this bike, like, oh, what is that? That's I don't know what I said. I didn't say One Piece. And then I found out later and had to edit it onto the screen because I didn't want people to rip me to shreds because I was calling it the wrong one.
But yeah, so there's a lot of dope like customized options. I mean, the one thing that I will excuse me, the one thing I'll say I wish Honda had done here though was to adopt that 150cc engine into their bikes, like you see in every other country in Southeast Asia except here for small bikes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Southeast Asia does have a dramatic amount of motorcycle manufacturing happening. Vietnam has their own factories. Cambodia has their own factory.
Philippines.
Malaysia, Philippines, Indonesia, they've all got their own Honda or Yamaha factories, sometimes Suzuki. And so there's just all these incredible models that are available within Southeast Asia. What do you know about other places in the world that have small bikes? For me, like if I think of Europe, all that comes to my mind is those guys in London that are trying to steal your bike off you and all riding around on scooters together.
I would love to encounter those people.
It would be fun. It's a knife city, London. They
I've trained knife fighting for years. I'm down.
So if anyone wants to lay out a challenge to Dana here,
hold on.
We'll make that happen if we get enough view. No, I'm joking.
Right here.
That's not a knife. This is a knife.
I just got this one.
I don't know if you've seen Crocodile Dundee.
Of course, you don't know if I've seen. What kind of question is that? Like, just
I'm used to talking to people younger than me that don't know and they haven't.
Just seen here next to my desk, right? I've got the Bowie. This is my daily carry. This is a buck 110.
That's for when you're eating fruit, right?
Yeah, and then cut it up I've got just this little one for opening packages.
Yes,
I think I might have another. Oh yeah, I have this little switchblade. I've got too many knives here. This is a little composite blade I bought for like 100 baht.
Wow, that's crazy, eh? I would not get that through customs if I was coming back to New Zealand. People often used to do that. That was the thing, getting like the dodgy lighters that kind of look like a grenade and stuff like that, bringing them back in and getting stopped in customs. So yeah, Europe has an interesting, like that, for me, it's either that or like Italy, there's the modern Vespa thing because everyone just rides them as commuter bikes.
I think of a guy like in Italy named Giuseppe riding around on his Vespa, like little like open face helmet, smoking a cigarette, drinking an espresso. Like that. That's what I envision.
When exactly, that's what first comes to mind. And then when I think about it, I remember there's a few, like Portugal has a real big small two-stroke scene, like 135, 150cc little, and we probably wouldn't class them as small bikes based on their orientation. They got the tank on top. They look like a full-size motorcycle, but these guys absolutely rip raw in them. I mean, when you get into Italy, they've got some crazy stuff. They've got the Vespa Cross Racing, which the guys from Revzilla, Ari Henning and Zach Kortz, they did an episode of that in one of their old companies.
Yeah.
They went over there and raced them. Then there's also like Piaggio Ape, which is the Piaggio three-wheel tuk-tuk thing.
Yep.
The little pickup-shaped ones, they race those off-road and on-road. So that, and then, I mean, if we're going all the way through Europe, I guess it's just kind of getting into, like, Eastern Europe. You get into the old Czechoslovakian two-strokes, like the Jawas and the CZs and things like that. So as far as modern bikes go, I don't know. The only place in Europe, I almost didn't say them, and anyone that's watching from Greece would have killed me. Greece has an outstanding, very similar to Southeast Asian small bike culture.
Oh, wow.
I didn't know if you knew that, but like
not.
modified waves, modified like Suzuki FX 125s. I've got one of those in my shed here.
Oh.
The Greece has a huge small bike population. A friend of mine's over there at the moment, and she was posting up photos of just like Honda Cub after Honda Cub after Honda Cub being lined up. Yeah, they were the go-to place for parts if you had a Honda Wave in the UK until Brexit happened.
Okay.
And now it's too expensive to bring them in because that's technically coming from Europe.
I think Latin America's got a pretty active scene from what I've seen as well.
I share a lot of their videos on my stories because those guys are loose.
Yeah.
Like, there seems to, like, there's one guy on Instagram that I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he rides this like little Honda CB150 or something. These tiny little skinny, locally produced 150cc 5 speeds or 6 speeds. And his whole stick is riding as fast as he can towards people and then braking at the last minute and like locking it up and going sideways towards them. And he just makes these videos. He's doing this maniacal laugh, just like, it's like he comes up and does big skids to people. And then you've got the dirt racing and all that kind of stuff that I've been sharing recently as well. Have you been to South America anywhere?
No, never South America. A little bit of time in Central America.
Okay,
but like some Mexico, but never.
There's small
never
bikes
south
in Mexico,
of there.
right?
Yeah, like around the beaches and stuff. I saw them, and then like more like probably like 250cc bikes. You see, like sort of like middle of the country.
Yeah, and then if we veer off to the other dramatically large continent, Africa, they have a lot of reliance on small motorbikes as their only form of transport in a lot of countries, not everywhere. And it's very hard to generalize about Africa because there are so many individual unique nations within that continent.
Yeah.
But I can think of watching YouTube videos of like world's most dangerous roads, and it's dudes with an old like 35-year-old Honda whatever with like 3 illegally cut logs on the back, riding through the mud on the back roads to drop them off to some log poaching guy who flicks them off into the black market. It just seems to be like definitely a tool. Like if you live in South America or you live in Southeast Asia or you live in Africa and you have a small motorbike, you can almost find a use for it work-wise, whether it's being a taxi or a courier driver or anything like that,
or strapping canisters of gas to the back of it and drive three at a time and driving around to deliver them. I mean, or putting a sidecar on it and selling pad krapow on the side of the road, you know? I mean,
that's a solid business plan in Thailand that a lot of families will do. Like the husband will be out working a reasonable like engineering job or something like that. The wife needs to keep busy. The kids are in school now. All right, love, I'm going to buy you a brand new Honda Wave 110. Yeah. Not a 125.
Not 125.
You don't get that.
Oh, no.
I'm going to bolt a sidecar onto the side of it, and you can drive around selling, fried rice and pad krapow, all that kind of stuff in different areas. And then when we retire, I'll put like a lazy boy in it.
Yeah.
And you can sit in the side of it. That's not uncommon either. I've seen that quite a lot.
Especially
like old couples.
On the eastern seaboard, you see those sidecars rigged up for passengers quite a bit. And like you said, it'll be a Wave 110, which I love. Love the Wave 110. And they'll be driving this sidecar with like 4 people in it and just trucking along. Some of them have little roofs on them to keep the sun off you.
Yeah. It's what do they call them? I was asking a Thai friend of mine. He said they're called salings. Saling,
No, I think
supposedly.
Saling is the one that has the 2 wheels in the front.
Okay, yeah, it might be. I don't
No,
know.
no,
Is that and
that's
then
Songlaw.
Samlaw,
Songlaw.
Samlaw? Yeah. So there's all these different names for them and all these different uses. Like if you
Saling
go to
is
the
the side. Saling is the sidecar. I think you're
Yeah, the
right.
Philippines have exclusive motorcycle sidecar taxis, and they're like aluminium, and you're enclosed with this like full-on shelter. You have to crouch over as well. A friend of mine was just there showing me photos, and they kind of
That
weren't
doesn't sound
west.
terrifying at all.
They weren't sized for Westerners, you know.
For sure.
If you
For
got a bit
sure.
of beef, you don't really fit.
So you and I are out of luck.
We're completely out of luck if we go to the Philippines, unfortunately. With Australia and New Zealand and in the South Pacific, there is like a part of the small bike world that is kind of ignored because it just doesn't matter to anyone else.
Yeah.
In Australia, almost every single piece of mail throughout the 90s and the early 2000s was delivered on a Honda CT90 or a CT110.
Nice.
It's just how it was. The same in New Zealand as well. And in New Zealand, you could even buy the Honda CT110 for about $1,000 cheaper as an off-road only model. It didn't have a number plate and it wasn't road legal. And that was just a farm use bike. They would take the normal tires off, put knobbly tires off, put crash bars on around the handlebars. Yeah, knobbly. Some big thick knobs on the tires. And they became kind of indestructible off-road beasts. What happened when they went out of their service life? Because basically the postal companies, New Zealand Post, Australia Post more so, would have tens of thousands of these bikes.
Yeah.
And they would, get to about 40 to 50,000 kilometers and they would flick them off into the secondhand market. A guy I know in Australia that actually helped out a guy called Nathan Millward. Nathan Millward rode a postie from Australia all the way to the UK home when his Australian visa ran out, basically, when he was young. And he was riding for about 800 kilometers and his bike broke down. He went to this random shop. They had all these refurbed postie bikes. He bought one of them, finished the journey. That shop is owned by a guy named Mike O'Neill, who owns Lambda, which is like the biggest aftermarket Honda CT110 parts supplier. He would buy the postie bikes up by the hundreds and sell them off to small South Pacific nations like Nauru and the Kiribati, like Kiribati. So all of these tiny places that have mere 30 kilometer square islands just dotted around the place, he would ship hundreds of them. So you can go around all these South Pacific nations and see all these small bikes. The Cook Islands, Rarotonga is another one. You can jump on a Honda Wave in Rarotonga, which you wouldn't expect. Yeah, in the South Pacific. It's like the road is 40 kilometers an hour speed limit. And if you do a lap of the island, I think it takes you 45 minutes. And that's it. So there are a lot of small bike, there are a lot of nations that find small bikes useful over here, but they're just few and far between.
I think that's one of the things that I love about small bikes is that yes, they do very much feel like a tool, right? But at the same time, they are so fun. And I was hanging with one of my buddies last night, and he has a click, and we were talking about just the love of having like riding every day and like being able to like jump on for 30 minutes and scoot to the office. And like if you're in a car, it feels like such a drag to have to like get in a car, sit in traffic, and like you almost feel unengaged. Whereas you jump on this bike and it's like instant joy, and you're driving along and you're very engaged.
Smelling the rest of this. In Bangkok, it's a real mix. You've got open sewer, meat sticks, and then like durian.
We don't have sewers here. They're drains. They're open drains.
Yes.
Everyone,
I should phrase that correctly.
They use septic in Thailand.
Yes,
but yeah, it's a visceral experience for sure. But what I love about it, and I think you do too, is just like you're so engaged. You have to be engaged with your ride, and I can use this same thing as a commuter vehicle. I can, make a living with it by strapping gas cans on the back or making Packer Pow. I could be a taxi driver. And then on the weekends, I want to relax. I jump on that same bike and I'm off to Nakhon Nayok. I'm off to Hoi Hin or Bong Sen, right? Like I'm just, it can be everything, and I love that about it. And like if I want to go off road, right, with my Grom, I can. If I
Yes.
want to go ride in the city, I can. I learned how to knee drag on that bike. I mean, it does whatever I need it to do, and that's what I love about it, man.
If it comes to physically having to answer the question why do you love small bikes, why do small bikes matter, why should they exist, and why do they exist, the answer is completely different for every single person.
Yeah,
And I will go as far as to say, as if you don't like small bikes and you think there's no place for them, you just haven't ridden enough small bikes yet.
exactly.
Because honestly, riding in a group of small bikes and you all really going to tap out at 60 miles per hour or
Yeah,
100 kilometers per hour, and that's it. And you're doing a little bit of a long distance trip, there is nothing better than getting into the groove,
yeah,
and feeling comfortable with each other and riding along, and it's camaraderie.
yeah.
And you get off the bike and your cheekbones are physically sore, all your face muscles, because you've been smiling the whole
Yeah,
time.
you
Yeah,
really can't not smile when you're
yeah,
on one of these bikes. And like you said, like a lot of people will talk about like going fast on a slow bike, and
yeah,
there really is something to that. Like knowing that I can drive my bike to its very limit is kind of
yeah.
empowering in a way. And
Completely agree.
like that's fun, right? And like I said, I've ridden big bikes. I've taken like 1,000 cc bikes on road trips,
Yeah,
and it's not as enjoyable to me.
no,
And you also like, oddly enough, because you're going so much slower, you see so much more,
yeah.
and you have
You
that
do.
opportunity.
You entirely take it in, and if like I've done that with routes I've driven endless times in my life here in New Zealand, and you jump on a bike and do the same thing,
Mm,
and you just notice so many different little things, and you just kind of experience it more. It's definitely an experience more than a method of just getting from one place to another. Although, if you need a method to get from one place to another, it can be that
it's
for you
also
as
that.
well.
Yeah.
So you've bought an Exciter
Yep.
155.
Correct.
Um, where do you see small bikes going? Because in Western countries, there's this big electric vehicle debate.
Yeah.
I feel like that debate is null and void in some countries. And I always find people getting so up in arms or angsty or really deeply involved in that argument interesting, because, you go to somewhere like Malaysia, it's just not going to happen now. It's not going to happen in the next 10 years.
Mm.
They will not dominate there very soon. It's just not physically possible with the way the country's laid out, the amount of people that use these bikes as their only form of transport, that can't
Yeah.
afford to go and lay out a dramatic amount for a bike with less range and all that kind of stuff.
Mm.
And in saying that, they're not available. Like, you bought this, you bought a 150cc 6 speed.
Mm-hmm.
What would be next?
For me, I mean, like I would love an EV personally, like an EV bike. Honda's
Mm.
made
We saw
three.
it. We saw it.
Yeah, we saw them. They made,
Yeah.
well, no, those weren't, not those. We saw those. That's not a Honda though, right?
No, that is, so that's a Honda Bentley is what they call it.
Okay.
And it's uh Bentley's weird, because a weird name, because that was in the 60s. That was a twin cylinder small bike. It was the
Okay.
Bentley, and they brought that name back. It's a twist and go with like a pickup back.
Yeah, it's a
And
cool
you can
bike,
stick stuff
but
on it.
I'm
Yeah.
not gonna ride it. It's
No.
a little small for me. To be
Yeah.
fair, and like anything
Yeah.
that's a step through, I have to be very cautious of, like size wise. But
Mm.
I would say, like, I thought it was so cool when I saw it, and like I said,
Mm.
I wouldn't buy one. I would ride it, like if
Mm.
I had the chance for sure. No,
Yeah.
but I'm saying Honda also, and we saw that what we saw was the battery swap, which I found really intriguing. You had seen it
Yes.
before, I never had. And the
Mm.
girl came in, pulled both batteries out of her bike, put two new ones in, and off she went. Um,
30 seconds just gone.
Gone, right?
Yeah.
Faster than I
Yeah.
could get gas in my MSX.
Yeah.
Now, the other side to that, not long after you left Thailand, Honda released the Super Cub EV, the
The
Dax
Dex.
EV, and
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Click. Was
And
that the other one? Or
yeah, but they were like on the Chinese market only,
yeah.
and they're tiny. They're super small, and they have pedals because they had to meet some kind of law.
Hmm.
And there's a few of them in Vietnam. I've seen them privately imported. It's a step in the right direction, but it's not a full size Super Cub electric bike. Is the problem?
Like to me, if there was, I would. I was actually, we were talking about like, could I buy a Cub and do the Shanghai conversion, but they don't sell that kit anymore. I reach out to them and they're like, oh yeah, no, we don't do that. That's our old business, you know. So like I was like literally looking at Cubs. I was like, I could buy this. What could I do? I could buy a battery welder, and make my own battery, my own fuel, my power cell, like easily. Like it's not that hard technically, but you know, the question does come down to like, what is next? Like, obviously I plan, like I tend to keep my bikes for a long time. I bought my 2015 MSX new when it hit the market, and I'll still, it's got more left in it, right? I'm not done with it yet. Right. And after my next project with it, I was even thinking like, let me stretch the back end and put a paddle wheel and bring it to the drags at Rayong next year. Right.
Yeah, man, that'll be so good.
Right?
Sand drags. Yeah.
Put some drop bars on it, and you know,
that's what I've been. Yeah, I was gonna say that's what I've been experiencing with my bike at the moment, and trying to do the Thai things, like doing launches at the moment.
Yeah.
And I've just put a bigger sprocket on the back of my Wave today because supposedly that's going to help with my launches. And I've got I've had a lot of people get in touch with me after my last video saying, "Hey, I don't know much myself, but have you tried this?" And all of these things I hadn't considered. So I've been getting some really good feedback, and I'll go out there and I'll embarrass myself again soon.
But I mean, there's more left to the bike, but for what's next, like I would love to see EVs. There's definitely some issues with that in Thailand, so or in Southeast Asia in general. One, this flooding, like we're in the rainy season. I fully expect to be riding through massive puddles in the very near future as part of my daily commute. That's a real thing. Batteries and murky water don't tend to do well. You know, another part of that is heat and batteries don't tend to do well together either. And these bikes are out in the sun all day. Range is a consideration, right? Where do you fit all of that capacity on a small bike? It's not like a Harley where they can build like 40% of the bike out as power cell, and then that, you know, offsets a lot of other things. So those are serious considerations. And when you think about, like you said, the use case of people, like in Bangkok, where they've got those battery stations, you could build 1,000 of those out in the city overnight. It'd be viable, right, for probably most people. But you get out, like I think a lot of countries in Southeast Asia, like you said, in Malaysia as well, you get out of the metropolitan area, and the density of human beings drops dramatically. So, and then like when I did the Sukhumvit trip, which we talked about, like I'll drive through Rayong, which is an industrial town that has a lot of people, and then 30 seconds later, there's nothing. And you see a farmer on the side of Sukhumvit, like in his little hut on the edge of his like 7 or 8 plots of rice. And so like that's the density you're now dealing with. And like that's where like the EV infrastructure would be very challenged in a country like Thailand for small bikes. Like something like, I see a lot of Teslas now in Bangkok, and like a car with the range of a Tesla, you'd be fine. You could get to the next city and there'd be a charger there. A small bike, like a Super Cub EV, let's say a full size EV Super Cub, isn't going to get me to Pattaya, which would probably be the next place I could charge something.
There's only one place that's really aced the small electric bike technology, and that is Taiwan with their company Gogoro. And Gogoro have the swappable batteries, and they've got more swappable battery stations in the country than fuel stations now.
Nice.
So hypothetically, you could get these bikes, and some of them do 100 kilometers an hour. So you can buy a 100 kilometer an hour capable electric bike, and you could do a whole lap of the island because there's so many of them. But and they've specifically said they're not going to even really bother exploring countries that don't already have a 50% or higher dominance of small bike usage within the main population of people that are driving. So the future's going to be super interesting, and I guess we just have to wait and see. And I guess we're lucky that we're young enough that we will see a lot of it play out. And because we take a massive interest in it, I'm sure we'll have these long, deeply specific conversations in the future, which will only pertain to a very small amount of people.
And I would love to do long road trips on an EV. like on an EV. But I would love to be able to. One of the trips I've always talked about is doing Route 4, which is the longest road in Thailand. It's got this weird route where it like goes out to Phuket, then back down, ends in Yala. But like to follow that whole road from Bangkok is like, and plus my wife's uncle worked on that road, and so like a little bit of a connection to it, and it goes to a lot of cool places. But if I could do that on an EV and just swap batteries along the way because I had enough range and I had enough speed to do it, I would love to. And like if every motorcycle win in Bangkok had an EV, right? Like I mean that's the other thing is like what are they priced at? Because these guys buy waves because they're affordable, relative to the economy. So can they sell an EV bike for 54,000 baht and be sustainable?
Question.
Yeah,
it's going to be really interesting to find out
like,
because
there's a reason you see guys driving waves and scoopies and clicks as motorcycle wins and not Daxes and Super Cubs and whatever else, CTs. None of those have passenger seats, but
no, you don't. And you can always be like, I think the bigger bikes that some of the like the big time taxi motorcycle taxi riders use, like some of them use Click 160s or the PCXs. Those bikes might be able to kind of provide some kind of EV platform because of their size and their space. But yeah, it's time will tell. And like you say, long distance trips are incredible as well. And to be faced with a form of transport that wouldn't be capable of doing them, then that kind of turns a lot of us off as well. Yeah. Which is interesting because next episode we're actually going to talk about my long trip.
An incredibly long trip.
Yeah, it was very long in distance, and it should have been longer in days. But we'll talk about that soon, possibly on the next episode.
Ride hard.
That's it. I think we've covered off the question of why without really answering it, because the answer is up to you.
Yeah,
it's up to you. Yeah, but hopefully this has given you a bit more context of what we consider the world of small bikes to be.
Ride your own ride for sure.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for watching this episode of Small Bike Stuff. I'm Callum.
I'm Dana.
And that's Dana. Yeah, we are in New Zealand and Bangkok. I don't know why I say New Zealand and Bangkok. I could say my city, but people just won't know what it is.
What?
Yeah, where are you? Anyway, we'll see you next time when we talk about a really long small bike trip from Malaysia through into Thailand. 2,500 kilometers, 1,500 miles, 7 days. Should have been longer, but we'll talk about that soon. See you next time.
Peace.